It's Friday. That used to mean something, but when you're retired, doesn't matter what day it is. Anyway, this video is about a man I met when I was really big pregnant with my first son. His dad and I were divorced due to his physical abuse, which I was not gonna take. Anyway, my little brother, John Paul, and one of his best friends, Norman, OD'd on some stuff called shrooms. Now, if you don't know what that is, it's a really bad kind of mushrooms. And so they were in the same hospital room together. Well, I went in one day to visit John Paul, and Norman's dad was there, Will. And we started talking, and so every time we would meet up at the hospital, you know, we would chat. Well, one day I made the remark, "These pantyhose are killing me." See, I had no filter then, and I don't have a filter now. But anyway, he said, "Hold on a minute." And he left the room and he came back and he had a pair of scissors in his hand. He said, "Go in the ladies' room and cut that waistband a little bit." So I did, and I felt much better. Well, our boys got out of the hospital, and of course they went back to doing drugs, and his son was the man who ended up murdering my little brother. But before that happened, Will and I had a very close relationship. Now, he was my dad's age, okay? But he would come over to visit me. I was living in a trailer then, and whether he was wearing coveralls or a suit, it didn't matter. And usually it was in the morning because he'd be on his way to work or somewhere. And I knew he owned a catfish farm. So he would pick, no matter what he was wearing, he would pick my baby up. Covered in food, he didn't care. And one day he called me and he said, "Debrajoy, is the wolf at your door?" And I said, "Will, what are you talking about? There's no wolves in town." And he started laughing, and he said, "What I meant by that was, are you okay? Do you have grocery money? Are you okay?" And I said, "Yeah, I'm doing fine." And I was, although it was very, very, very tight. And one day when he was over visiting, I kind of felt a brush across the back of my hip. And I thought, oh no, not gonna get into that. So that night when I was getting ready for bed, I always emptied my pockets and, you know, did whatever it took and put them in the laundry. Well, I found a $100 bill in my back pocket. Now I called him and I said, "Will, I can't take this." And he said, "Yes, you can. I've got plenty to share." So I gave it back to him. And he was upset, but he didn't give me too much of a hard time. we were over at his house. We used to go out to eat, and we were over at his house one day, and he had this big old ranch style house in town. And he said, you know, I've been thinking about redecorating this living room. And I said, really? So I started telling him what I would do if it were my living room. And I said I would have cream-colored couches trimmed in blue piping. I would have a really nice comfy rocking chair. I would have whatever kind of tables, whatever. I just went on and on about it, you know. And we were talking and laughing. We were laughing because his furniture in there, in his whole house actually, was so old. So anyway, he called me up one day and he said, Deb, I got to go on a trip and I'll see you when I get back. And I said, okay, how long you going to be gone? He goes, oh, could be 2 weeks, could be a little longer. So I said, okay, have a good time. Well, he got back and he called me. He said, I'm just really busy right now catching up on work and stuff, and I'll call you when I get free. And I said, okay. So another week or so went by, and he called me and he said, why don't you and the baby come over and we'll have something to eat? And I said, okay. So I went over and we had something to eat, and he was kind of like, I don't know, nervous or fidgety or something. And I said, are you okay? You're not acting right. He said, well, come here, I want to show you something. We walked into the living room, and it was furnished exactly like I said that I would furnish it. Well, y'all, he wasn't really gone on a business trip. He was shopping and he was having sofas made and all this kind of stuff. I just stood there with my mouth hanging open. I didn't know what to think. And he said, well, you know, I just took your advice because I have no sense where that stuff is concerned. But I kind of thought, wow, that's almost a little creepy. So anyway, after that, I found out that my little brother was in Texas, in prison. And I was just devastated. I mean, we were in Arkansas, but to someone who did not have a really good car at the time, making that trip was out of the question. Not to mention, I didn't have gas money. You know, it was terrible. So one day he came over and he said, if you were going to go see your little brother, would you want to fly or would you want to drive? Well, now, I wasn't fond of flying. So he said, okay, we're going to leave next week. Get ready. We'll just be gone a couple of days. We're going to go and see your little brother. Well, y'all, I never took anything from Will. And he was always offering to take me to the grocery store or whatever, you know, and I always said no. But I jumped on the chance to go see my little brother. So we drove. Now, he had a big old car. I don't remember what kind it was, but it was real luxurious, you know. So it was a really easy trip. Now, we got there, and I hadn't realized that you have to be on an approved visitors list. And I guess that's been so forever, because I know it definitely, I had to be on the visitors list to go and see Sam. So we went, and when we got there, they weren't going to let us in to see him because we weren't on the list. So Will said, well, just sit right here, Deb, and I'll be back. He was gone like maybe 20, 30 minutes, and I was starting to get worried. I mean, y'all, I had been in jails, but I had never been in a prison before. So he finally came back, and he said, okay, we're going in to see John Paul. And I said, what? And I laughed, and I said, what'd you do, bribe somebody? And he just looked the other way. Now, y'all, I don't know if he bribed somebody. I don't know what he did. But we got to go in and see my little brother. That was one of the kindest things that anyone has ever done for me. So we stayed over 2 days, and my parents were watching my baby. And so we left, and it was heartbreaking. Absolutely gut-wrenching, heartbreaking. I knew I wouldn't be able to come back and see him. Well, my little brother wrote to me a couple weeks later, and he said, you know that friend of yours that brought you here? And I said, yeah. And he goes, he gave me a couple $100. And I said, what? He goes, yeah. He gave me a couple $100. So he was dating this lady, and she was not a nice lady, y'all. She would show up out at his catfish farm, and I'm trying to back into a space here, and I got a gentleman that is walking, and I don't want to hit him. So anyway, she was really like mean to him, and I'm like, Will, why are you putting up with that? He said if I didn't do what she wanted to, right when she wanted me to, she would come out to my farm and start having a big old fit. I said, I can't believe you're putting up with that. Well, anyway, he called me one day, and he told me that he broke up with her. And I said, well, really, I think you did the right thing. So, it wasn't long after that he proposed to me. Now, y'all, he was my daddy's age, and not in the best physical shape. He didn't look like Chuck Connors, I can tell you that. He told me, he said, Deb, as soon as we get married, I'm going to put all the money that's required into a college fund for the baby. And you will never, ever want for anything again as long as you live. And if you don't like this house, we'll build a new one. Well, y'all, I was so touched. I was so touched, but I could not marry him. I just couldn't. So I had to break off our friendship because I knew how persistent he could be. So anyway, he wasn't happy about it, and he called me a few times after that. But he was a real gentleman. He was not going to harass me or anything like that. But every once in a while, he would call me, and he'd say, Deb, have you changed your mind? And I'd say, no, Will, I'm not going to change my mind, sweetie. So he finally stopped. You know, he stopped after a couple months. He didn't call me anymore. And I tried to keep tabs on him just to make sure he was okay. Now, he passed away quite a while ago. And after I stopped seeing him, I was at my sister's one day, and she said, Debrajoy, I cannot believe you didn't marry that man. And I said, sister, I wasn't in love with him. I couldn't marry him. She said, Debrajoy, the man was a freaking millionaire. He doesn't just have a catfish farm. Blah, 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 blah. Even my parents had given me their blessing. And I'm like, whoa. I said, Daddy, he's your age. And he goes, what the hell's wrong with my age? Well, that put a stop to that. But anyway, y'all, it didn't make any difference to me whether he was poor or had a good job or he was a millionaire. It didn't matter to me. I was not in love with him, and I knew I never would be. And I'm just not the kind of woman that would marry somebody because they have a lot of money. Now, I know this sounds like a far-fetched story that I just made up, but I tell you what, I swear to the good Lord, I didn't make up a bit of it. It happened just like I told you. So that's just another interesting thing that happened to me in my life. And I hope you got a chuckle out of it. And I'm going in to sit with Marge now. And so I love you. And do something fun today, okay? And I'll talk to y'all later. Bye.